This is a horrible thought on its, on its surface. So I don't want to make light of this. So there's no joke here. But it's actually optimistic. And it goes like this. There's a really good chance that the coronavirus is already in the United States in a much bigger way than has so far been detected. 2 points of optimism. One, it's entirely possible that 100,000 people are infected in this country and we didn't even notice, which tells you we might not notice it if it gets worse. But also the technology that looks like it's far away, in 3 months, you're going to see things come online that you thought were impossible. Oh, here's my prediction. My prediction, in 3 months, you will see let's say, solutions for coronavirus, and it might be only a solution for testing, not necessarily a solution for a vaccine. But in 3 months, you're going to see things that you didn't think were physically possible or technologically possible. There's a really good chance that the coronavirus is already in the United States in a much bigger way than has so far been detected. So the number of cases been detected is in the the low few dozens. The number of cases that we assume must be active, because you couldn't have a few dozen confirmed unless certainly there's a larger group of people who also have been exposed. But what is that group? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? So here's the good news disguised as bad news. If I had to guess, and this is just speculation, I saw somebody on Twitter saying they thought 50,000 people were infected in the United States. I think that's probably a reasonable, I'm not saying it's true, but that's a reasonable speculation. That feels well within the area of, if you found out later that 50,000 people were infected already today, you'd probably say to yourself, yeah, could be. But here's the thing. If 50,000 people are already affected, it means it's almost below our notice. Not almost, it means it's below our notice. Which means that if we had, let's say we were less clever and nobody had ever identified the coronavirus. Suppose nobody ever knew what it was, or that it was special, or that it traveled, that it was more viral. Suppose nobody knew any of that. And you just woke up every day and went to work, and some of you got a cold and some of you didn't, but it's winter, so everybody gets a little something. We all get the flu, take a few days off, go back to work, talk about it. Oh, you got the flu? Yeah, I got the flu too. It was pretty bad. Had a bad week. Wasn't too bad, not the worst flu I ever had. Did you hear somebody's great-grandmother died? Oh, that's too bad. How old was she? 85. What killed her? She pneumonia. So it would be really easy to imagine a world in which, if we didn't know the coronavirus had a name and it's special, that you could live your entire life and never know it destroyed the entire country. The thing which I equate to this is climate change. So the people who are most afraid of climate change, they did some economic estimates, and they said that in 80 years the GDP could be down 10% because of climate change. Now what they say is down 10% from wherever it would have risen to in 80 years, which is about 5 to 10 times bigger than it is now. So if it grew by 5 to 10%, 5 times or 10 times, and then at the end of that, we saw that, well, we could have gotten another 10% more, we wouldn't notice it. It would both be a multi-trillion-dollar problem, because 10% of the global GDP is many trillions of dollars. At the same time, you wouldn't notice, because you'd gone up 5% before you lost that 10%. You just wouldn't even notice. So it's possible that if we'd never heard of the coronavirus, we would hear that a lot of people in their 80s are dying of pneumonia, and we'd think to ourselves, we'll miss them. That's terrible that they died, but they were 85 and they were going to die. It wasn't going to be that long. So just keep that in mind. If you find out tomorrow that this is already massively taken hold in America, that's good news, because it means you didn't notice. Am I right about that? That's not crazy, is it? That the best news could be that 100,000 people in the United States already have it. Let me give you my coronavirus prediction, and then I will sign off. And it goes like this. I believe the United States is in this race. So our race is to suppress the coronavirus as much as possible so we can buy time. Now, the time that we need to buy is about a year to get some kind of a vaccination. Can we buy a year? Well, obviously Iran can't. Iran cannot buy a year. Sorry. But can the United States? China can't buy a year. But can the United States? I don't think we can. I don't think the United States will be able to be somewhat free of the coronavirus for a year. I would expect by summer it will be raging. But most people will just have a cold and go home. So that's where I think it's going to go. But let me tell you something that you don't know to add to this coronavirus story. So do you remember in the year 2000, there was going to be the year 2000 bug, and it was going to destroy all the computers, but then the technologists got involved, and they got really focused and serious, and somebody figured out how to do it quickly, maybe more than one person. They built programs to automate the task of reprogramming, exactly as I predicted they would, and it all worked out great. Now, of course, the medical world is working as hard as they can, the scientific world, to try to find a quick response to the coronavirus. Now, if you imagined that this would go the way other things go, you might be wrong, because we've never had this much attention so concentrated on something so important and so time-related. It's a lot of science focused in one place. And there's one development or field of development that you don't know about, and I'm going to tell you because I do. Several years ago, about 3 years ago, I was working with the Berkeley, the College of Berkeley, the university, for startups that were coming out of the Berkeley world. And I got to see a bunch of startups that you haven't seen. And in fact, I invested in several of them. And so I got to learn about something that you don't know about yet. And it's good. And it's this. After 9/11, the government of the United States wanted the government labs to figure out how to quickly diagnose various bioweapons in the field. So the problem was that if you had some suspected bioweapon somewhere, you needed to know as quickly as possible what you were dealing with. And at the time, the technology meant getting a sample, sending it back to somebody's lab, and they test it in the lab, and it takes however long that takes. So the government wanted the labs to develop a quick, simple, portable way to test for bioweapons, and I assume that any kind of blood test, etc. What came out of that was some technology, specific technology, to make it really cheap and easy. So I don't know the details, but basically there's some microchips involved, and there's some tiny needles in some cases. There's basically a set of technologies that the government labs developed, which are now available to private industry. So private industry can license these technologies for, I don't know, nothing or cheap or whatever it is, because the government came up with it. I've seen these devices, so it's not theoretical. I've seen sitting on a table, several different devices that you can put on a table, easy to lift, easy to carry. You could probably put it in a backpack and just plug it in. And you can take blood tests right there. Now, the diagnosis part might be a little harder. That might take a special chip, special piece of equipment. But here's the thing that I want to tell you. From where I saw it 3 years ago, these were already well-developed devices. From those well-developed devices, I don't think it's the biggest leap in the world to customize those for the coronavirus. And here's the other big technological change. The reason that we used to send stuff to China and other places for manufacturing is because they could do it more cheaply. That has changed. What changed is automation. If the best way to build something is robots, then China pays the same for robots as we do. And you don't want it to be made by Chinese robots because then you have to pay to ship it back here. So the least cost way to manufacture used to be used to be China because you could have people do it. But as long as it's robots, the United States is actually the best cost. So here are the trends to look for that could come together really quickly. Robots building test devices, they could ramp up a lot faster than you think. So getting the robots built to build it is going to take some work. But once they're built, they're going to build some machines. And we could do that quickly. And then the second part is the diagnostic part that these new low-cost devices are very close to being able to do. So here's the thing. What I knew that you didn't know until just now is that the physical technology to be able to rapidly test everyone is way better than you imagine it is. We're way closer. Doesn't mean it'll all come together and all work out. It's a little unpredictable, but the technology is right there. So, 2 points of optimism. One, it's entirely possible that 100,000 people are infected in this country and we didn't even notice, which tells you we might not notice it if it gets worse. But also the technology that looks like it's far away, in 3 months, you're going to see things come online that you thought were impossible. Oh, here's my prediction. My prediction, in 3 months, you'll see let's say, solutions for coronavirus, and it might be only a solution for testing, not necessarily a solution for a vaccine. But in 3 months, you're going to see things that you didn't think were physically possible or technologically possible.